It began on a tranquil evening in the dense, crimson jungles of Zorath Prime. The twin suns dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and violet, casting long shadows over the alien flora that swayed gently in the warm breeze. The air was thick with the hum of insectoid creatures and the distant, rhythmic croaking of amphibious life forms. For Captain Krell of the Thalvax Dominion, it was supposed to be a routine patrol. His squad of 8 elite soldiers, each clad in sleek black combat armor, moved silently through the underbrush, their plasma rifles gleaming faintly in the fading light. The mission was simple: monitor the activities of the new species that had recently crash-landed on Zorath Prime. Intelligence suggested these humans, as they called themselves, were an upstart species from a backwater planet in an unremarkable star system. Primitive, fragile, insignificant. And yet, there was something about the reports that had unsettled Krell. The humans had arrived only a few cycles ago, and already, they had begun constructing makeshift shelters and fortifications. More concerning, they had repelled 2 scouting parties sent to observe them. No casualties on their side. For a species lacking energy weapons or advanced technology, it was curious. Krell's communicator crackled to life, breaking the stillness. "Captain," came the voice of Lieutenant Ralker, his second-in-command. "We've picked up movement ahead." "Single life form. Confirmed human?" Krell asked, his mandibles clicking softly in anticipation. "Affirmative. Lone target, approximately 2 clicks north." Krell's eyes narrowed. A lone human? In the heart of the jungle, far from their encampment? It didn't add up. He signaled his squad to halt and gestured for them to fan out. "Stay alert," he murmured. "We don't know what these creatures are capable of." The team moved forward cautiously, their weapons at the ready. The jungle seemed to grow quieter as they approached the location Ralker had indicated. Krell's keen senses picked up the faint sound of crunching leaves and the low, melodic hum of a voice. A human voice. And then they saw him. The human was seated on a fallen log, his back to them. He appeared to be unarmed, wearing what looked like a lightweight exosuit adorned with patches of some kind. He was humming a tune, a strangely cheerful sound that seemed entirely out of place in the oppressive jungle. Beside him, a small, glowing device emitted faint pulses of blue light. Krell raised a clawed hand, signaling his squad to hold their positions. He stepped forward cautiously, his weapon trained on the human. "Identify yourself," he commanded, his voice a low growl. The human turned slowly, revealing a face that was unexpectedly youthful, with sharp features and a disarming grin. "Oh, hey there," he said casually, as if greeting an old friend. "Didn't see you guys sneak up on me. Nice stealth work, by the way." Krell's mandibles twitched in confusion. The human's tone was light, almost jovial. Not the reaction he had anticipated. "You are trespassing on Dominion territory," Krell said, his voice firm. "State your purpose here." The human raised his hands in mock surrender. "Whoa, easy there, big guy. Name's Jake. Jake Harper. Just out here enjoying the local flora and fauna. Lovely place you've got here. You are alone?" Krell demanded, ignoring the human's attempt at pleasantries. Jake's grin widened. "Well, that depends on how you define alone. Physically, sure. Spiritually? That's a whole other conversation." Krell's patience was wearing thin. He motioned for 2 of his soldiers to flank the human. "You will come with us. Any resistance will be met with force." Jake shrugged. "Sure, lead the way. Just one thing, though." He gestured toward the glowing device beside him. "You might want to step back a bit. That thing's a tad unstable." Krell frowned, his gaze shifting to the device. "What is it?" "Oh, nothing too fancy," Jake replied nonchalantly. "Just a little improvised explosive I whipped up. Not lethal, of course. I'm not a monster. But it'll give you a hell of a headache." Before Krell could react, the device emitted a high-pitched whine, followed by a blinding flash of light. The shockwave knocked him and his soldiers off their feet, sending leaves and debris flying in all directions. Krell's vision blurred as he scrambled to his feet, his head ringing. When his senses cleared, Jake was gone. Rage boiled within Krell. as he barked orders into his communicator. Fan out. Find him. He cannot have gone far. The squad moved quickly, their training kicking in as they combed through the jungle. But Jake had vanished without a trace. Krell's frustration mounted with each passing minute. How had a lone, unarmed human outmaneuvered his elite unit? As the hours dragged on, Krell's communicator crackled again. Captain, Ralker's voice came through, laced with urgency. We've found something. You need to see this. Krell followed the coordinates to a clearing, where his squad had gathered around a series of strange markings on the ground. They were symbols, crude yet intricate, etched into the dirt with precision. At the center of the markings was another device, similar to the one Jake had used earlier. It's a message, Ralker said, his voice tense. From the human. Krell stepped closer, his eyes scanning the symbols. They formed words, written in the Dominion's language. It read, "Catch me if you can." Krell's claws clenched into fists. This was no ordinary mission. This human, this Jake Harper, was toying with them. And Krell was determined to put an end to it. The hunt was on. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. By the time night fell, Krell's squad was exhausted but no closer to capturing their elusive target. The jungle seemed to conspire against them, with its dense foliage and labyrinthine paths. Every so often, they would find traces of Jake, a discarded piece of equipment, a freshly snapped branch, a faint footprint in the mud. But he always remained one step ahead. It was during a brief respite that Krell began to piece together the human strategy. Jake wasn't just running. He was leading them. Guiding them somewhere. But where? And why? As if in response to his thoughts, a distant sound reached Krell's ears. A low, rhythmic thumping, like the beating of a massive drum. It seemed to come from deep within the jungle, growing louder with each passing moment. What is that? Ralker asked, his voice tinged with unease. Krell didn't answer. Instead, he motioned for the squad to move toward the sound. As they approached, the jungle opened up into a vast clearing, revealing the source of the noise. A massive structure loomed before them, its surface gleaming in the moonlight. It was unmistakably human in design, with angular shapes and exposed machinery. The thumping sound emanated from within, accompanied by flashes of light and bursts of steam. It was a machine. But its purpose was unclear. Standing at the base of the structure, silhouetted against the glowing lights, was Jake Harper. He looked up at them and waved cheerfully. "Took you long enough," he called out. Krell raised his weapon, his anger boiling over. "This ends now, human. Surrender, or face annihilation." Jake's grin never wavered. "Oh, I don't think so," he said. "You see, this little game of ours has been fun, but I've got places to be, and you've got, well, bigger problems to worry about." Before Krell could respond, the ground beneath his feet began to tremble. The machine roared to life, its lights intensifying as it emitted a deafening hum. Jake gave them a mock salute before leaping onto a platform that ascended rapidly into the structure. Krell's instincts screamed at him to retreat, but it was too late. The machine released a blinding pulse of energy, and everything went dark. The darkness was fleeting. As Krell's vision returned, he found himself lying on the jungle floor, surrounded by the groans of his disoriented squad. The air was thick with the acrid stench of burning vegetation, and the once vibrant jungle was now a landscape of charred remains and smoldering embers. Whatever the machine had done, it had left a mark, one that spoke of power beyond anything Krell had ever encountered. Rising to his feet, Krell surveyed the scene. His armor's HUD flickered erratically, struggling to recalibrate after the energy pulse. "Status report," he barked, his voice sharp with urgency. Ralker staggered toward him, clutching his helmet. "Systems are compromised, Captain. Shields are down, and comms are intermittent. I've lost contact with command." Krell's mandibles clicked in frustration. "And the human?" Ralker shook his head. "No sign of him. But whatever that device was, it's gone. Gone." The word hung in the air like a challenge. Krell refused to believe that Jake Harper, the cunning, infuriating human who had led them on this wild chase, had simply vanished. No, this was a game to him, and Krell was determined to win. "Regroup and rearm," Krell ordered. We're not leaving until we. A low rumble interrupted him, followed by a sound that sent a chill down his spine: laughter. It was faint at first, carried on the wind, but it grew steadily louder, echoing through the devastated jungle. And then, from the shadows, Jake's voice rang out. "You guys okay back there? That pulse wasn't too much, was it?" Krell's eyes darted toward the source of the sound, but the human remained hidden. "Show yourself, coward." Jake's laughter only intensified. "Coward? That's rich coming from the guy who brought a whole squad to deal with little ol' me. Tell you what, Captain, why don't we make this interesting?" Before Krell could respond, a bright light flared in the distance. It was brief but unmistakable, another of Jake's devices, beckoning them like a beacon. Krell clenched his fists, his claws digging into his palms. "He's taunting us. What are your orders?" Ralker asked, his voice steady despite the tension. Krell's response was immediate. "We follow. But this time, we're ready for his tricks." ******. The trek through the jungle was grueling. The terrain, already treacherous, had been further destabilized by the energy pulse. Fallen trees and jagged rocks littered their path, forcing the squad to move slowly and deliberately. All the while, Jake's voice continued to haunt them, drifting through the air like a phantom. "You're getting warmer," he teased at one point, his tone light and mocking. "But you've got to pick up the pace. I've got places to be, you know." Krell's temper flared with each passing comment, but he forced himself to remain focused. This was no ordinary prey. Jake was clever, resourceful, and unnervingly confident. Krell couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap, but retreat was not an option. His honor and the reputation of the Dominion was at stake. Hours later, they reached another clearing. At its center stood a structure, smaller than the first but no less ominous. It appeared to be some kind of relay station, cobbled together from scrap metal and alien technology. The device emitted a faint hum, its surface glowing with an eerie blue light. "Stay alert," Krell warned as the squad approached. This could be another. A sudden explosion cut him off, sending the squad scrambling for cover. From the tree line, a volley of projectiles rained down, each one emitting bursts of blinding light and deafening sound. Krell's vision blurred as he activated his armor's thermal filters, searching for the source of the attack. And there he was. Jake Harper, perched high in the branches of a massive tree, wielding a weapon that looked like it had been pieced together from spare parts. He grinned down at them, his eyes gleaming with mischief. "Surprise!" Krell's claws tightened around his rifle as he barked orders to his squad. "Suppressive fire. Take him down." The squad responded with precision, their plasma rifles lighting up the jungle with bursts of energy. But Jake was fast, too fast. He moved through the trees with an agility that defied logic, firing off shots from his makeshift weapon as he went. Each shot was calculated, designed not to kill but to disorient and confuse. "You guys are really bad at this," Jake called out, his voice carrying over the chaos. "Didn't they teach you how to deal with guerrilla tactics in Alien Boot Camp?" Krell ignored the taunt, focusing instead on predicting Jake's movements. He aimed carefully, leading his target, and fired. The plasma bolt struck the branch Jake had just leapt from, sending it crashing to the ground. For a moment, there was silence. And then, "Nice shot, Captain," Jake said, his voice coming from a different direction entirely. "But you're going to have to do better than that." Krell growled in frustration as he scanned the tree line, searching for any sign of the elusive human. His soldiers were struggling, their discipline unraveling under the strain of the relentless ambush. They needed a new strategy, and fast. "Fall back," Krell ordered, signaling his squad to regroup. "He wants us scattered. Don't give him the advantage." The squad moved quickly, retreating to the edge of the clearing. Krell's mind raced as he considered their options. Jake was toying with them, exploiting their weaknesses with surgical precision. But every move he made revealed something about him, his patterns, his methods, his mindset. "Ralker," Krell said, turning to his lieutenant. "Activate the motion trackers. Focus on the treetops." Ralker nodded and adjusted his helmet settings. Moments later, a faint blip appeared on Krell's HUD. Jake's position. Krell allowed himself a small, grim smile. Got you. Without a word, Krell aimed his rifle and fired. The plasma bolt struck true, hitting the branch Jake was perched on. This time, he didn't leap away in time. With a loud crash, he fell to the ground, landing in a heap. Krell's squad moved in quickly, surrounding the fallen human. For a moment, there was only the sound of heavy breathing and the crackle of burning vegetation. And then, Jake began to laugh. You guys are persistent, I'll give you that, he said, wincing as he pushed himself to his feet. His exosuit was scorched and battered, but he didn't seem particularly fazed. But did you really think it would be that easy? Krell leveled his weapon at Jake's chest. Surrender, human. You have nowhere to run. Jake tilted his head, his grin widening. Oh, I'm not running. Not anymore. Before Krell could react, Jake pressed a button on his wrist. The relay station behind him erupted in a blinding burst of light, and the ground began to shake violently. Krell's instincts screamed at him to retreat, but it was too late. The earth gave way beneath their feet, and they were plunged into darkness once more. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. When Krell regained consciousness, he found himself in an underground cavern. The air was damp and cold, and the faint sound of dripping water echoed in the distance. His squad was scattered around him, slowly coming to their senses. But Jake was nowhere to be seen. Ralker groaned as he sat up, his armor covered in dust. Captain, where are we? Krell's eyes scanned the cavern, noting the strange, bioluminescent fungi that lined the walls. Some kind of subterranean network, he said, his voice grim. The human must have lured us here. As if on cue, Jake's voice echoed through the cavern, amplified by some unseen system. Welcome to the funhouse, gentlemen. Hope you're ready for the final act. Krell's claws clenched. This wasn't just a hunt anymore. It was a battle of wills. And he was determined to come out on top. Krell's mind raced as he assessed their situation. The cavern's dim, bioluminescent glow cast eerie shadows, making it difficult to gauge its full scale. The stalagmites and stalactites created a jagged, alien architecture, and the distant hum of machinery hinted that Jake hadn't chosen this location by accident. No, this subterranean lair was part of his plan, another move in a game that was quickly growing more perilous. Form up, Krell commanded, his voice cutting through the disoriented murmurs of his squad. His soldiers obeyed, shaking off the remnants of the blast and taking defensive positions around him. Ralker, ever reliable, was already scanning the area with his visor. Captain, Ralker said, his tone grim. I'm picking up faint energy signatures. They're moving. Closing in on our position. Krell tensed. Harper has automated defenses down here, he surmised. Stay alert. Engage only when necessary. As if on cue, a mechanical whirring echoed through the cavern. From the shadows emerged a swarm of drones, their sleek, angular designs glinting in the faint light. They hovered menacingly, their weapons systems glowing with a pulsing red hue. Krell counted at least a dozen, but there were likely more lurking in the shadows. The drones opened fire without warning, their energy bolts scattering across the cavern. Krell's squad reacted instantly, their training taking over as they returned fire. The air filled with the high-pitched whine of plasma rounds and the crackle of energy shields absorbing impacts. Krell himself took aim, his rifle's precision shots disabling 2 drones in quick succession. Keep moving, he barked. Don't let them pin us down. The squad pushed forward, weaving through the natural formations of the cavern. Despite their skill, the drones were relentless, their coordination almost unnerving. Krell knew these machines weren't acting on simple programming. Jake Harper's fingerprints were all over this. He was watching them, manipulating the battlefield like a puppeteer. As the last drone fell, its chassis sparking and smoking, a slow clap echoed through the cavern. Krell's gaze snapped upward, and there he was, Jake Harper, standing on a high ledge with that infuriating grin plastered across his face. Bravo, Captain, Jake called out, his voice amplified by unseen speakers. I knew you were good, but this is next-level stuff. Your guys are like intergalactic Navy SEALs or something. Very impressive. Krell leveled his rifle at the ledge, but Jake was already on the move, disappearing into a tunnel. "After him," Krell ordered, his frustration mounting. The squad advanced, their boots crunching against the uneven floor. The tunnel twisted and turned, its walls narrowing at points, forcing them to move single file. All the while, Jake's voice continued to taunt them, drifting through the labyrinth like a specter. "You ever wonder why you guys are so predictable?" Jake said, his tone light and conversational. "I mean, don't get me wrong, you're good at what you do. But you've got this whole follow the leader, march in formation thing going on. Makes you easy to read. Easy to exploit." "Ignore him," Krell growled, though he couldn't deny the truth in Jake's words. The human had studied them, learned their tactics, and used them against them at every turn. The tunnel opened into another chamber, this one larger and more intricate. Machinery lined the walls, its purpose unclear but undoubtedly sinister. In the center of the room stood a large console, its surface covered in glowing buttons and holographic displays. Jake stood behind it, his hands casually resting on the controls. "End of the line," he said, flashing a grin. "I've got to say, it's been fun. But all good things must come to an end, right?" Krell raised his weapon, but before he could fire, Jake pressed a button on the console. The room's lights dimmed, and a deep rumble shook the ground. From the shadows emerged a towering mech, its design both crude and imposing. It lumbered forward, its heavy footsteps echoing like thunder, and a low, synthetic growl emanated from its speakers. "Meet Big Bertha," Jake said, stepping back with a theatrical bow. "She's not as charming as I am, but she gets the job done." The mech unleashed a barrage of missiles, forcing Krell's squad to scatter. Plasma rounds ricocheted off its heavily armored frame, barely leaving a scratch. Krell's mind raced as he analyzed the situation. The mech was too powerful to take head-on. They needed a strategy, and fast. "Ralker, flank it. Draw its fire," Krell ordered. "The rest of you, aim for the joints. We've got to disable its mobility." The squad moved into action, their coordinated assault a testament to their training. Ralker darted to the left, his precise shots drawing the mecha's attention. Meanwhile, the others targeted its joints, their concentrated fire gradually weakening the armor. Sparks flew as one of the mecha's legs buckled, causing it to lurch to the side. "That's more like it," Jake called out, his voice tinged with genuine admiration. "Now we're having some fun." Krell ignored him, focusing on the mecha's vulnerable points. With a final, well-placed shot, its second leg gave out, and the massive machine crashed to the ground. The squad closed in, their weapons trained on Jake. But Jake was already moving. He activated another sequence on the console, and the floor beneath him began to rise, carrying him toward a hatch in the ceiling. "Gotta run," he said, offering a mock salute. "Catch you on the flip side." Krell fired, but the shot missed as the hatch closed behind Jake. The room fell silent, save for the faint hum of the machinery and the labored breathing of his squad. "He's getting away," Ralker said, his voice tight with frustration. Krell's mandibles clicked in irritation. Jake Harper was the most infuriating adversary he had ever faced. But this wasn't over. "Not yet." "Ralker," Krell said, his tone cold and determined. "Find a way to track him. We're not letting him escape." As Ralker worked on the console, Krell allowed himself a moment to reflect. This human was unlike any he had encountered. Resourceful, unpredictable, and, oddly charismatic. Krell couldn't help but feel a grudging respect for Jake's tenacity. But respect wouldn't stop him from completing his mission. The console beeped, and Ralker looked up. "I've got a lead." He's heading toward the surface. "There's an exit not far from here." Krell nodded. "Then we move. Double time." The squad pressed on, their determination unshaken despite the challenges they had faced. Krell knew the final confrontation was approaching. Jake Harper might have been a step ahead until now, but the Dominion's elite didn't give up easily. And this time, Krell vowed, there would be no escape. The chase ended on the barren plateau at the peak of Zorath Prime's jagged mountains. The sky above roiled with storm clouds, lightning crackling ominously as the twin suns cast an eerie glow over the desolate landscape. Krell and his squad emerged from the cavernous exit, their weapons drawn and their armor battered but intact. Ahead of them, standing defiantly against the raging storm, was Jake Harper. The human had shed his jovial demeanor. His stance was firm, his eyes sharp, and his grin replaced with a look of grim determination. Behind him, a sleek, compact shuttle rested on the rocky surface, its engines humming softly. The faint glow of its thrusters suggested it was primed for takeoff. "End of the line, Harper," Krell growled, stepping forward. His rifle was aimed squarely at Jake's chest. "You've run out of tricks." Jake's gaze didn't waver. "You really don't get it, do you?" he said, his voice calm but resolute. "This was never about running away. It was about showing you what we're capable of." Krell's mandibles clicked in irritation. Capable of what? Deception? Cowardice? Jake shook his head. No. Survival. Ingenuity. The will to fight back, even when the odds are stacked against us. He gestured to the damaged weapons and armor of Krell's squad. "You've seen it firsthand. Your elite team, armed with the best tech the Dominion has to offer, pushed to their limits by one human with a toolkit and some scrap metal. Imagine what we could do if we had access to your resources." Krell hesitated, his grip on his rifle tightening. Jake's words were infuriatingly bold, yet there was an undeniable truth to them. The human's resourcefulness had been unlike anything Krell had ever encountered. But this wasn't a negotiation. This was a mission. "Enough talk," Krell said, his voice cold. "Surrender, or we will end this here and now." Jake sighed and raised his hand slowly, his expression weary but defiant. "All right, Captain. You win. I'll come quietly." For a moment, the tension in the air seemed to ease. Krell stepped forward cautiously, his squad flanking him as they approached Jake. But just as Krell reached out to restrain him, Jake's expression shifted. A sly smile crept across his face. "But first," Jake said, "I'd like to leave you with a little parting gift." Before Krell could react, Jake pressed a concealed button on his wrist. The shuttle behind him roared to life, its engines flaring brightly as it lifted off the ground. At the same time, the rocky plateau beneath them began to tremble. A series of charges, hidden among the rocks, detonated in rapid succession, sending shockwaves through the ground. Krell and his squad were thrown off balance as the ground beneath them cracked and shifted. The shuttle ascended rapidly, disappearing into the stormy skies as Jake's voice echoed over the comms one last time. "No hard feelings, Captain. Maybe next time, you'll think twice before underestimating a human." By the time the explosions subsided, the plateau was a fractured wasteland. Krell pulled himself to his feet, his armor scorched and his pride wounded. His squad was battered but alive, their expressions a mix of frustration and exhaustion. Ralker approached, his helmet's visor cracked but still functional. "Captain," Ralker said, his voice cautious. "The human, he's gone. We've lost him." Krell's claws clenched, but he forced himself to take a deep breath. The mission was a failure, but it had been more than that. It had been a lesson, one that Krell could not ignore. "No," Krell said after a long moment. "We haven't lost. We've learned. About him. About his kind. About ourselves." Ralker tilted his head, his confusion evident. "Captain." Krell turned to his squad, his posture resolute despite the circumstances. "The Dominion has spent centuries conquering, subjugating, and underestimating those we deem inferior. This human, Jake Harper, has shown us that there is strength in ingenuity, in resilience, in the refusal to give up. Perhaps it is time we rethink our approach." The squad exchanged uncertain glances, but none voiced dissent. They had witnessed Jake's tenacity firsthand, and even the most hardened among them couldn't deny the impact he had made. As the storm began to clear, Krell looked to the horizon, where the faint glow of Jake's shuttle had disappeared into the distance. "Mark my words," he said quietly. "This isn't the end. Not for him. Not for us. We will adapt. And when we meet again, we will be ready." Ralker nodded slowly, his respect for his captain growing. "And if we don't meet him again?" Krell's mandibles twitched in what might have been a smile. "Then perhaps the universe will be better for it." The squad began their descent from the mountain, their steps heavy but purposeful. They had been humbled, yes, but also inspired. The Dominion's path forward would not be easy, but Krell was determined to ensure it would be different. Far above, in the safety of his shuttle, Jake Harper leaned back in his seat, a satisfied smile on his face. He watched the receding planet through the viewport, his mind already racing with plans for what came next. Humanity had made its mark, and he was just getting started. As the stars stretched into lines and the shuttle entered hyperspace, Jake muttered to himself, "Not bad for a primitive species."